How's it going guys, Kris here, and in today's guide we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the M1907 SF in Battlefield 5, a fast-firing automatic rifle for the Assault class, unlockable at Assault Rank 8. Originating prior to the First World War in 1907, the Winchester Repeating Arms Company produced something a bit more updated from their previous rifles, many of which used lever-action systems to feed and extract cartridges. This would be the Model 1907, one of several semi-automatic designs by Winchester to be brought out within several years of each other, sparking a new wave of weapon technology at the dawn of the 20th century. It wasn't too long until this new technology would be utilised, with World War I being just around the corner. And with demand for weaponry being extremely high at the time, this resulted in many different weapons being pushed into service by European forces. American firearm companies would have been thrilled to profit on this new demand, with Winchester sending over almost 3,000 of their Model 1907 rifles to France to be used by their troops. These rifles would go on to see action during the war, and it's said that many of them were modified for full auto fire, which essentially would have made them a very early assault rifle type weapon if true. Magazines were also lengthened to accommodate up to twice as much ammo, now having the capacity of either 15 or 20 rounds, plus they were also given bayonet mounts, a pretty popular feature for rifles during the early 1900s. Usage of the M1907 would have mainly been limited to air crews while in service, and despite essentially being one of the first semi-auto rifles to be made, its production life lasted right up into the late 1950s, comprising of several different variants. Anyway, in Battlefield 5, a fully automatic version of the M1907 does exist, and it's actually a very deadly gun for the assault rifle category, dealing a maximum damage of 25 up close, up to the distance of 10 meters, which then drops down over distance, eventually reaching that cutoff point at 75 meters, where the damage now levels out at just 15. This gives the M1907 SF the very same damage profile as a few of the other assault rifles, including the STG-44, Rigorols, and Sturmgewehr 15, allowing it to drop other players in just 4 shots within those shorter sight lines, though up to 7 shots against players beyond the range of 50 meters. Though of course, in close quarters, the M1907 SF's got the potential to be more dangerous than those others, having the second fastest fire rate in the class of 770 RPM, just beaten by the M2 carbine. Though with the M1907 having a higher damage output per bullet than the M2, this actually gives it the quickest kill times of all the full auto assault rifles, and it's this combination of speed and power that makes it a really competitive option for pushing forwards and mowing down players in short range gunfights, going hand in hand with aggressive gung-ho tactics. Fire rate and damage can't be boosted anymore through specializations, but that doesn't really matter, with the M1907 already having plenty of aggression as it is, with close range kill times that even slightly beat the likes of the medic classes Type 2A and Suomi. Though being a rapid firing aggressive weapon does impact the gun in a negative way regarding recoil, with the rifle having quite a lot of kick, limiting its performance over range by a hell of a lot. Considering the gun does shoot so quickly, its horizontal values aren't really all that bad, having the same left and rightwards value of 0.205, which is actually a little bit less than the STG-44. With both those horizontal values being equal, this means that the rifle's not going to drift to any specific side in particular, in many ways making the recoil more predictable. But the main problem is all down to that vertical value, being the highest in the class with a figure of 0.82, forcing the weapon to kick upwards quite violently as you hold the trigger down, with recoil stacking up quite quickly due to that faster rate of fire. Combine this with the fact that the M1907's also got a really measly bullet speed of just 570 meters per second, generally makes it a really poor weapon to use in gunfights against players outside of those closer ranges, drastically slowing down kill times over distance, with more shots straying off target. This wild upwards kick can be tamed a bit by shooting in shorter bursts, and it can also be reduced with the recoil buffer specialization too, helping to slightly extend the gun's effective range. Though this still doesn't exactly make it a particularly stable weapon in full auto fire, as you might still struggle to keep that recoil under control, restricting the M1907 to close quarters where its recoil will prove to be less troublesome. While being one of the gun's strongest factors, its sheer speed can also be one of its biggest drawbacks, with the M1907 SF only able to hold up to 21 rounds total at any given time. This is not only a pretty small ammo capacity for a full auto weapon to have, but because you'll be expending those rounds at a rate that can be quite tricky to control, you're often going to be thrown into sticky situations, being forced to reload due to those magazines being depleted so quickly. This wouldn't be so much of an issue if the M1907 wasn't the aggressive weapon that it is, as to fully utilise the gun's nippy kill times, you're going to have to use it closer to the action, and closer to the danger, situations where running out of ammo mid-gunfight can often be far more problematic, making it a very deadly but risky choice to use within its optimal engagement range up close. The M1907's reload times really don't make life any easier here either, with its tactical reload taking 2.68 seconds and its empties lasting 3.28 seconds, neither of which are particularly quick, being slightly longer than average. And with no option to decrease these times either or boost the gun's ammo capacity, you're pretty much left with a gun that could potentially get you killed very easily if you're not careful when advancing forwards, especially if you try and take on too many players all at once. Moving on to the specializations next. At the very top of the tree, we've got the slings and swivels spec, cutting down deploy times, followed by quick aim, speeding up aim down sights. Because you'll often be running around in CQC with the M1907, and might often need to rely on your sidearm and gadgets when the gun runs out of bullets, I tend to prefer using slings and swivels here, just to make the weapon feel a bit more manoeuvrable and make those switch out times a bit more responsive. In the middle, you'll be able to make hipfire a lot tighter and more effective on the left side with the enhanced grips and polished action specs, though on the right, the recoil buffer and custom stock specs are going to help to reduce some of that vertical recoil, while lowering spread while aiming and moving. The right side is going to help to counter one of the gun's biggest flaws, perhaps making it slightly easier to control over those early mid-ranges, though I generally prefer to run down the left side instead, making hipfire more accurate, playing to the gun's strengths more, while also going pretty well with slings and swivels too. Last of all, we've got the bayonet and light and stock options at the bottom. I don't tend to use bayonets very often in Battlefield 5, hence why I've chosen light and stock to increase movement speed in ADS, though the bayonet can still definitely be a useful choice for this gun in particular, being used in close quarters and often prone to running out of ammo at awkward moments. In conclusion, the M1907 SF is a gun with a hell of a lot of strong traits, many of which sort of contradict each other, making it an extremely effective close range weapon, but one that's often going to punish you if you get too carried away. Having a good combination of speed and close range power makes it a brutal thing to be up against within shorter sight lines, though it may be very effective in one-on-one gunfights, but not so much in situations when more players get involved, being incapable of dealing with multiple opponents reliably due to having a pretty small magazine capacity, a fire rate that can be quite tricky to moderate, along with some slower than average reload times, which, all put together, often makes the gun a fairly risky thing to use within the ranges it's designed to perform at its best. This forces you to plan your movements carefully and limits how crazy you can go with the weapon, with short bouts of power being followed by short bouts of vulnerability, in a way restricting how effective the gun can truly be up close, with those rapid kill times coming at a cost. The further away your enemies are, the less effective the M1907 is going to be against those too, being hindered by strong vertical kick and low muzzle velocity, not to mention the weaker damage output over range, all things that are going to hamper the gun's range performance. It's safe to say that the M1907 SF is definitely a force to be reckoned with within those earlier distances, but you do have to keep those reliability factors in mind, playing with offensive tactics, but always having a backup plan, and being prepared to whip out that sidearm if push comes to shove. So that's it for this one folks, hope you enjoyed the guide, thumbs up if you did, and of course, subscribe if you haven't already to see loads more guides just like this one. Take it easy, and I'll be seeing you in our next video.